Trent thought he was marrying the love of his life, only to have his heart shattered into pieces on his wedding day. Before we dive into the story, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you are watching from and what time it is. Trent Caldwell stood alone at the altar beneath a canopy of white roses, his heart pounding in his chest. At 28, the handsome blonde CEO and sole heir of Caldwell Industries should have been reciting his vows. Instead, he stared at the half-empty aisle, the murmurs of worried guests growing louder with each passing second. His black tuxedo felt suddenly tight, and a cold sweat dampened his brow as confusion turned to dread. "Where is she?" he thought, chest tightening. A whisper rippled through the crowd when it became clear the bride wasn't coming. Trent's mother rose from the front pew, hands pressed over her mouth in shock. John, his best friend and best man, placed a steadying hand on Trent's shoulder. But Trent barely felt it. Every eye in the grand cathedral was on him, the golden-haired heir jilted in front of all. A flush of humiliation burned his cheeks, even as the rest of him went numb. The elaborate floral arrangements and crystal chandeliers blurred before his eyes. It felt as if the floor had opened up beneath Trent's feet. One moment, he believed he was seconds away from a life of happiness. The next, that life was crumbling to ash. He blinked rapidly, fighting tears that threatened to spill in front of the hundreds of guests. She wouldn't do this. Not after everything. Yet reality was undeniable. The woman he loved was gone. A bridesmaid approached with trembling lips and pressed a crumpled note into Trent's hand. He unfolded it with shaking fingers. "I'm sorry," the note read in hurried ink. "I can't do this. Forgive me." There was no signature. The words swam on the page as Trent's vision blurred with tears he could no longer hold back. John tightened his grip on Trent's shoulder, anchoring him as the whispers in the pews grew into gasps. Someone murmured, "Oh, that poor man," and another hissed about scandal. Trent's throat constricted. He couldn't breathe or speak. All he could do was stare at those two short sentences that had just shattered his world. In the chaotic hours that followed, Trent learned the cruel truth. The woman he had given his heart to, the woman he was prepared to spend his life with, had never truly loved him at all. She was a con artist, a gold digger who had schemed with her real boyfriend to rob Trent blind. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, she had slowly drained funds from an account he'd trusted her with, and taken every gift and piece of jewelry he'd ever given her. On what was meant to be their wedding day, she and her lover disappeared together, vanishing with the money and leaving Trent standing in disbelief at the altar. The pain that struck Trent was beyond anything he'd known, a physical ache in his chest, as if his heart had been ripped out. He spent that night alone in what would have been their honeymoon suite, the grand penthouse apartment, now silent and empty. Trent sank to the floor by the unused marriage bed, still in his rumpled tuxedo shirt, and finally allowed the sobs to come. Hot tears streamed down his face as he pressed his back against the bed frame, shaking with grief and anger. He had been ready to give her everything: his name, his devotion, a lifetime of love. Now, all of it was betrayed. For weeks, Trent walked around in a haze of heartbreak. Everyone had advice or hollow words of comfort. "It's her loss," people said, or "You dodged a bullet." His business colleagues at Caldwell Industries tried to assure him that work would distract him. His mother insisted he see a therapist to talk through the pain. But no words could reach the emptiness inside him. It was as if someone had carved a piece out of Trent's soul, leaving a gaping wound that refused to heal. The once warm, idealistic young man found his heart turning to ice. Trent told himself he no longer believed in love. He vowed that no woman would have the power to hurt him like that again. He threw himself into his role as CEO, working relentless 14-hour days. In the gleaming boardrooms and executive offices of Caldwell Industries, Trent was in control. Confident, composed, untouchable. He hid behind tailored suits and cool, polite smiles. To the outside world, he seemed to have moved on. The scandal of being left at the altar long behind him. But in quiet moments, when he was alone in his office late at night or in the darkness before dawn, the memories returned. He would see her face in his mind and feel again how it felt to love so deeply and be utterly betrayed. Rage and sorrow twisted inside him anew, and he would clench his fists until his nails bit his palms, determined never to feel that kind of pain again. In the silence of his empty home, Trent faced the ache of his reality. He was the only child of the Caldwells. He carried not just the wealth of the family, but its legacy. Without him, the Caldwell name would end with this generation. There would be no son or daughter to carry on after him, no one to inherit the empire his father and grandfather had built. He had always wanted children someday. Back when he believed in love, he used to dream of filling the halls of the Caldwell estate with laughter and tiny running footsteps. Those dreams had nearly died when his fiancée abandoned him. How could he ever trust someone enough to start a family now? How could he give his heart to a new wife after what happened? One rainy evening, months after the broken wedding, Trent sat in the dim study of his penthouse with a glass of whiskey untouched at his elbow. John had come over, bearing take-out dinner and much-needed companionship. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. John knew better than to push Trent to talk about feelings on a normal day. But tonight, John sensed a particular heaviness in his friend's eyes as Trent stared into his untouched whiskey. After a long moment, John cleared his throat. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Trent, your dream of finding a wife might have died, maybe. But what about your dream of being a father?" Trent looked up sharply. In John's warm brown eyes, he saw no pity, only concern and a flicker of hope. "I can't be a father without a wife," Trent muttered, the familiar frustration rising. "Children. They need more than just a father. And after what happened, I won't go through that again, John. Trusting someone. Letting them in." A silence settled between them, filled only by the soft patter of rain on glass. John broke it quietly. "There are other ways, Trent. Ways to have a child without having to marry again." He spoke carefully, as if approaching a skittish horse. Trent narrowed his eyes, perplexed. "What are you getting at?" "Surrogacy." John said the word as though offering a lifeline. "You could find a surrogate mother. It's not the traditional route, but it's a very real option. You have the means to do it properly, legally, safely. You'd get to have a biological child, your heir, without risking another broken heart from a relationship." Trent stood abruptly, walking over to the window. The city was awash in blurry neon reflections on wet pavement. His own reflection hovered superimposed on the glass, a tall, strong figure on the outside, but inside, he felt lost. "I don't know if I can trust anyone enough for that either," he admitted, voice low. "You'd make an amazing father," John added, his voice firm with feeling. "You've got a good heart, even if it's been hurt. Don't let what she did rob you of everything. She took your money. She took your trust in love. Don't let her take away your chance to be a dad, too." Trent's eyes stung unexpectedly. He turned away, hiding the moisture gathering there. John's words had struck a chord that resonated painfully in his chest. Becoming a dad. Was that still possible for him? Could he really have a child of his own without reopening the door to the kind of heartbreak he barely survived? He imagined a little boy with the Caldwell blue eyes, or a little girl with his freckles and his smile. That night, after John left, Trent barely slept. The more he considered it, the more it seemed like the only way forward. The next day, he drove to the Grand Caldwell estate and found his mother, Marilyn, in the sunroom, pruning her roses. She looked up with a soft smile, but her eyes tightened when she saw the serious expression on his face. "What's troubling you, darling?" she asked, her voice soft but laced with concern. Trent hesitated, the weight of his decision heavy on his shoulders. Finally he spoke, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Mother, I've been thinking about the future, about family." Her eyes lit up with hope. "Oh, Trent, I'm so glad. I've been waiting for this day, when you would start thinking about a family again." Trent ran a hand through his blonde hair, unable to meet her gaze. "I do want children, Mom. I've always wanted them. But I can't go through that again. I can't risk trusting someone with my heart." His voice faltered, a hint of the old pain creeping in. There was a long pause before he continued, his voice quieter now, filled with resolve. "I've been considering surrogacy." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Marilyn's face froze, her hands tightening on the armrest of her chair. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came. "No," she finally said, her voice trembling. "No, Trent. This isn't how it's supposed to be. A child should be born out of love. Not this. You're talking about paying someone to carry your child?" Trent's heart ached, but he steeled himself. "I know it's not what you wanted, Mom, but this is the only way forward." His mother's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted this for you, Trent. I wanted to see you find someone who could make you whole again. This—" She looked away, her voice breaking. "This is not what I imagined. It's not what your father would have wanted either." Trent felt the sting of his mother's heartbreak. He reached out and cupped her face gently, his own eyes dampening. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know this isn't easy. But I need this. I need to know that there's still hope for me to have a family, even if it's not the way we planned." For a moment, they just stood there, staring at each other, both filled with an overwhelming sense of loss. Then Marilyn wiped her eyes and nodded slowly, her shoulders sagging with resignation. "If this is truly what you want," she faltered, choking on her words, "I can't stop you. But please, Trent, be careful. A child is not a substitute for love. You can't just hire someone to fill the hole in your heart." Trent nodded, his own throat tight with emotion. "I'll be careful. I promise." Later that evening, back in his penthouse, Trent sat alone before his laptop. The city lights glittered outside his window, but inside, everything felt silent, as if the weight of his decision was hanging in the air, pressing down on him. His finger hovered over the Submit button on the surrogacy website. He had typed the words, describing his desire for a child, for a legacy, and for a future. He had written of a home filled with love, a child to carry on the Caldwell name, and a promise to protect and cherish the life he was about to create. He took a deep breath and clicked Submit. For the first time in months, Trent felt something other than pain. A quiet hope bloomed in his chest, fragile and new. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where he could finally move forward, build a future, and make a family of his own. Subscribe for part 2, and remember, love is free.